Clutch Trucker filmed before a live and furry studio audience. Rusty, the world-famous meatball dog. Hey YouTube, Clutch Trucker here. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Clutch Trucker channel. I actually wasn't planning on doing a video today, but the way my log worked out today is a perfect example of how things would have made it so much easier under the new rule. If it was just 2 weeks later, my log today would have looked so much better and it would have been much easier to do. So I thought, well, let me run over that because today is a really great real-world example of how these changes, especially the split sleeper berth provision, which is what I would have enacted today to give me more time on my 14, and I'll explain it all as we look at the log, because this is a real-world example today. I had to PC to this truck stop in Knoxville, Tennessee, the TA East, for an hour and a half to get here, which DOT might kind of look at that and go, oh, there's got to be one that was closer there, Clutch Trucker. Yeah, with some open parking? No. I picked up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and this load is going to North Canton, Ohio. Between Chattanooga and Knoxville, there are 3 truck stops. They're all small, 2 pilots, 1 Loves, and they're all small, and they're all full by mid-afternoon. There wasn't going to be any parking there. So let's look at this real-world example of how the new changes, which are going into effect in 2 weeks, Tuesday, September 29th, could have made today's log look a hell of a lot better. All right, before we dive into today's real-world example, let me back up just a little bit and talk about the personal conveyance rule. It was like early summer last year in 2019 that FMCSA did at least give us a little more flexibility with that. Personal conveyance up until then, the only thing we could ever use it for is, say you were at you worked for a bigger company and you're at their company yard and you've dropped your trailer and you wanted to just run over and bobtail and get some dinner or go to the grocery store or Walmart and resupply the truck or something. You could do that as long as you came back to the original place you started, and they had to be a reasonable distance, which, well, what the hell does that mean? That's where it could be up to interpretation. I always figured like 10 miles at most, but you had to come back to the original place. You could never be moving your load forward. Then after they had the ELD mandate go into effect, what was that, in late 2018, then last year, they realized too many people were getting stuck at shippers and receivers. You'd get there, and you had maybe even 3 or 4 hours left on your 14, and yet they ate up all that time. And you legally, at that point, still could not drive to a truck stop because you were under a load. So they changed the rule early summer last year and said, even if you're laden, as they call it, which means you're hooked to a trailer, you're under a load, you could move forward, like toward the destination you're going to the nearest truck stop or safe haven under personal conveyance without penalty, and you did it in an off-duty position on your e-logs or on your paper logs. You put it in an off-duty position and you did an annotation to let them know that's what you're doing, and that was legal. Okay, they put that into effect last year. Some of you may not have even heard about that. I'm sure some of your companies didn't want to tell you about that, but it was there for us last year. So we were able at least to do that. So that's what I had to use today because I couldn't extend my 14 today, and I ran out of hours while I was at my second my shipper at my pickup in Chattanooga today. I had to use personal conveyance to get all the way up here to Knoxville. And like I said earlier, because there's no open truck parking anywhere between Chattanooga and Knoxville, and I'm not going to go in the wrong direction back down towards Atlanta to maybe find a spot. So I was at least able to use that. And yeah, now an hour and a half, 90 miles or so, they might kind of frown on that. But I put on my log, drove a PC to nearest truck stop with guaranteed parking because I reserved a spot here at the TA East in Knoxville. I wasn't going to fool around with it. I'm tired. It's been a long day. So, if they were going to give me any crap about that, I'm like, hey, I reserved a spot. I went to the nearest one where I could do that and knew I could get to it so I could get proper rest. So, get off my... Now remember, I'm on paper logs, and I know some of you have not watched a lot of my previous videos. Are going to say, well, how was that, Clutch Trucker? Well, because they put the rule in a few years ago before the ELD mandate that said if you have a 1999 or older engine, which I do in this truck, you don't have to run e-logs. Yep, here's my logbook folder right here, and right here tucked inside, here's all my documentation to prove that I have a 1999 engine. There's my picture of my engine plate. I've got documentation from California and everything. I've tons of stuff to prove that my engine is 1999 and therefore I don't have to run the e-logs. Believe me, I've had to use it a couple of times. So now let's look at today's log, and I'll run you through it and show you where I got stuck at my first receiver. I went on duty for 15 minutes, and then I was there for 3 hours. If this were 2 weeks later, when the new rules take effect, September 29th of this year, that would have stopped my 14. Would have made things a lot better. So let's dive in and take a look at that log. Okay, as we look at my log here from today, it is Tuesday, the 15th, 2020. All right, and remember, because I work for Turquoise Trucking in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I do all my logs on the Central Time Zone. So I was in sleeper berth, you can see right there, till 4:45 a.m. Central Time, and then I dropped down, made a notation, and said I was fueling, cat scaling, and pre-tripping in Walton, Kentucky. I did that in 15 minutes, and then I went to another 15 minutes off duty. As I went inside, went to the bathroom, grabbed my receipt, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I start driving at 5:15 a.m. I drive all the way over till 10 a.m., and you drop down my notation there. I took a break in Charleston, Tennessee. Stopped there, let the dog out. I cooked up one of my Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwiches. Well, a good thing, you know, thank you very much. All right, okay, then I moved on at 10:15 on over to my delivery in Duluth, Georgia. So there you see I arrived at 12:30 Central, which is 1:30 Eastern Time. Dropped down for 15 minutes on duty. There's my on-duty line. Okay, I show unloading in Duluth, Georgia. Now, I had giant rolls of paper that I had picked up at Domtar in Dubois, Pennsylvania. Don't call it Dubois. They call it Dubois. You call it Dubois there, and they're going to laugh your ass off. Yeah. We have a Dubois in Wyoming as well. D-U-B-O-I-S. That's Dubois, but because Wyoming and Pennsylvania are both hick states, I'm from a hick state, I admit it. We say Dubois. Anyway, so that's where I picked up. So I'm delivering giant rolls of paper there in Duluth, Georgia. Okay, so back to my log. You can see right there at 12:30, I showed I was unloading in Duluth, Georgia for 15 minutes. Then I go up here to the sleeper berth line from 12:45, and look what happens. 1, 2, 3:45. 3 hours in the sleeper berth, 3 hours off duty or in the sleeper berth. Guess what? That would be the first of 2 breaks in my split sleeper berth under the new rule taking effect in 2 weeks. I could have stopped my 14 right there, which means my 14 wouldn't, instead of ending at 6:45 p.m., would have ended at 9:45 p.m. But under the current rule that I'm under right now, that didn't stop a damn thing. All it did was waste my time. So you see, after they finally finished unloading me at 3:45, I got back on the road, down to the driving line for an hour. I drove over to Emerson, Georgia, where I took a break at a Love's. Went to the bathroom, grabbed some McDonald's, which is now sitting in my stomach like a freaking rock. Anyway, got back on the road at 5:15, drove over to my next pickup, my next shipper, at 6:30 in Chattanooga. I dropped down to the on-duty line where I showed load in Chattanooga, Tennessee, okay, for 15 minutes. Then went back up to the sleeper berth from 6:45 to 7:45. Now that doesn't stop anything under the new rule or the current rule because it's too short. Now what happened then is at 6:45, I had run out of my 14, because remember I started right there at 4:45 a.m. So at 6:45 p.m. my 14 ran out. Now if this were 2 weeks later under the new rule, that 3-hour break right there would have stopped my 14, and I would have had until 9:45, which is right there, if I can put my pen there, where my 14 would have ended. So what I had to do is shoot up to the off-duty line. I made a notation, and I said PC to nearest truck stop with guaranteed parking. Because like I said earlier, there wasn't any parking in the ones nearby on my way at all. So I had reserved a spot at the TA East here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I showed off-duty from 7:45 to 9:15, made a notation at 9:15, parked Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay, that's the way I had to do it now. And like I say, they might frown at the fact that it took an hour and a half to do that, but you know, you can't tell me I have to search for spots. I just wanted to find a spot and go to sleep. It's been a long day. But under the new rule, I would have had until 9:45 under my 14 because of that 3-hour break. So since this was a great real world example, that's why I wanted to show this to you. Now on my drive time, I still had 1 hour and 45 minutes left on my drive time when I was parked there at the new shipper in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So under that new rule, with that 3-hour break there stopping my clock, stopping my 14 for 3 hours, giving me now till 9:45 p.m., I would have been completely legal, and I wouldn't have had to go on to PC, where I might get some crap about that because it took me an hour and a half to get to a safe haven. Now, under the new rule that's going into effect in 2 weeks, since I then ended up being parked at 9:15, and technically I still had till 9:45 on my 14 under the new rule, but I stopped at 9:15. So as long as I would have taken at least 7 hours off, then I would have had, well, part of a reset. And this is where I talked about that in my previous video, talking all about the split sleeper berth. You don't get everything back. You don't get what you did in between the two breaks. You only get back what you did before both breaks. Okay, so since I stopped then at 9:15 p.m., that's where my 7 hours would have started again to make that a pair, because that's what you have to do under the new rule. It has to be a pair. Okay, so then at, well, 7 hours later from 9:15 p.m. would have put me at 4:15 a.m., right? If I'm counting my hours right. So at 4:15 a.m., I would have still had 7 hours left to drive because I did most of my driving before that 3-hour break. So I would have gotten all of that back. Those 7 hours would have come back to me. Not only that, you calculate the new 14 from the end of your first of the 2 sleeper berth breaks, which ended at 3:45 p.m., which means then add 14 hours to 3:45 p.m., you get 5:45 a.m., right? Now, you still have to add the 7 you took off because that stopped the clock. So that gives you until, well, let's see, 12:45 p.m. the next day. And you got 7 hours to drive. Not a bad deal. And now, if you wanted to just take a full 10 off from 9:15 p.m. to 7:15 a.m., well, now you've got a full 10, or I mean full 11, and full 14 again, and they can't be pissed at you for taking extra long time in the break and resting more. So even though you only did the one of the 2, the second one was a full 10, so you got the full reset again. Have I confused you too much? This is just a good real world example, and I hope that helps. I know for me, when I was first trying to figure out the whole sleeper berth break on the current rule and everything, it helped to hear a lot of different examples. So this was a great real world example today, that if the rules had come into play, they're only 2 weeks away, how that would have made the log look a lot better, and how I could have manipulated that to work better for me. All right, and like I say, if I wanted to take a full 10 off from 9:15 to 7:15 a.m., great. But I still got a chance to stop that clock during the day so that I could drive and use up the rest of my driving time and make it to a safe haven, make it to somewhere I wanted to go without having to use PC and get scrutinized by DOT. So thanks for tuning in. I hope that helped. I hope it didn't confuse you too much. As always, please subscribe. I know a lot of you guys are new to the channel because I've gotten a ton of subscribers over the last couple of weeks thanks to my hours of service videos. I've got tons of videos on here, well over 200 videos. I've got parody songs about COVID-19. Scroll down, check those out. I've got quick and dirty repairs, wire repairs, air filter changes, glad hand repairs, tons of stuff on this channel. My George Foreman grill unboxing, checking about that. The ultimate purple seat cushion, which has literally saved my ass. Tons of videos on here. Scroll deep and check them out, all right? Like, comment. I do get to your comments. Takes me a day or two sometimes because I'm a working truck driver, but I do get to them. And as always, sniff that magic YouTube fairy dust. Clutch out.